Welcome, and make yourself comfortable as we travel together into a quiet world of seeds and patience, a world where tiny packages of life rest in the cool dark and wait for a very long time, where the air is still and a soft hum in the distance sounds like a low lullaby. Imagine yourself walking down a slowly descending corridor, the light dim and even, the floor slightly cool under your steps, your breath steady as you pass doorways that lead to rooms filled with carefully labeled envelopes and silver canisters, each one a quiet promise that someday, perhaps centuries from now, a garden will return. How sleepy are you on a scale of 1 to 10? If you like drifting off with calm science, you can gently tap like and subscribe. And if your eyes stay open a little longer, there is a playlist in the description that can play softly in the background while you relax. Now, let yourself settle. Shoulders unclenching, jaw loosening, the gentle rhythm continues as we step into the quiet of a seed vault and the slow hope that fills it. The air in this vault is dry, and there is a purity to it, a clean feeling, as though the moisture has been carefully persuaded to stay away. Along the walls, rows of boxes rest on sturdy shelves, each box lined with packets that hold seeds as simple as rice or wheat and as unusual as mountain wildflowers that bloom once every few summers. Each packet carries a name, a number, a place, a temp, and in every one there is a sleeping embryo wrapped in a coat of protection, holding its breath. Your fingertips brush a cold metal surface, and you feel the faintest vibration, the whisper of machinery that keeps the room at a steady temperature, often a standard of 18 degrees below freezing, cold enough to pause the chemistry of living without the harshness of deep liquid nitrogen. The gentle rhythm continues. Seeds are small, but they are not simple. Inside each one there is an organized quiet, a tiny plant folded and tucked, a food supply arranged around it, a protective coat sealed over everything. If you imagine a seed cut in cross-section, you can almost see the embryo curved like a comma, the radicle that will become the first root, the plumule that will unfurl into the first leaves, cotyledons that serve as soft stores of energy, and in many species, the endosperm, a gentle cushion of starch, oils, and proteins. The coat is layered, waxy on the outside, more fibrous within, often with subtle spirals or pores that guide water in when the time is right. All of it rests in waiting, its interior chemistry slowed, its enzymes folded like sleeping hands. When seeds are dried and cooled, their inner water content drops to a level where the molecules settle into a glassy state, a kind of quiet solidness that slows the passage of time for them. In good storage, oxygen is kept low and moisture is kept away, so that the usual reactions that cause aging drift into a drowsy standstill. It is like setting a clock down and letting the tick fade to a hum. Around the world, seed banks and vaults gather and keep this quiet life. There are national collections and local libraries, and there are global reserves tucked into places designed to be steady. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault rests inside a mountain on an Arctic island, a long tunnel that leads to doors heavy with security, and beyond those doors, rooms of cold, dry air where duplicate collections from many countries are held, unmingled, carefully sealed. There is the Millennium Seed Bank in a calm stretch of countryside, where glass and green meet stone, and underground rooms are cool and carefully cataloged. Many countries keep their own seed vaults with refrigerators and freezers in leaf green buildings or unassuming laboratories where technicians and botanists and librarians of living material move steadily through routines. The gentle rhythm continues as they count seeds into packets, weigh them, dry them over beads of silica gel that themselves slowly change color when they have collected water, then seal everything into foil pouches with a hiss of heat and a soft crimp at the edge. They place labels that are clear and careful, with names, collection dates, and the origin of the plants, because when you are asking a seed to sleep for decades or more, you must also create a memory that travels with it. Not all seeds rest in the same way. Some are called orthodox, and they welcome dryness and cold, folding themselves tight and losing most of their water, letting their insides become glass-like and stable. Cereals, many legumes, many wildflowers behave in this calm manner. Others are recalcitrant, refusing to dry down, and if you try to take too much water from them, they lose their living spark. For these sensitive seeds, the path to the future is different. They might be kept at a cool, slightly moist condition for short periods, or rescued as tiny living tips of tissue that are frozen quickly in special ways, or kept as plants in small sterile tubes, trimmed and trimmed again, the hairline roots resting in clear gel. Slowly, a strategy emerges for each species so that none need be left behind if careful hands and attentive minds are there to help. Even for orthodox seeds, there is a softness needed because drying must be gentle and even, and temperature must drop gradually so that the embryo is not jolted. Walk slowly with me through the aisles again. Listen to the soft click of a distant door, the faint beep of a scanner tracing a barcode, a technician moving like a librarian who knows the location of every volume. In one room, germination tests are laid out like a garden that never sees the sun. Small dishes lined with moist paper, seeds placed with tweezers, and a steady warmth applied or a gentle cold, each species tested in the way it prefers. A bean swells a little and sends out a white root that tapers into the paper. A mustard seed shows a tiny green hook of a first leaf. A wild grass lives out at its first days of growth in a small, controlled castle. In another room, someone measures moisture content using a warm oven and a tiny scale, writing down numbers that represent the sleeping weather inside each seed. Over time, technicians check viability curves, watching how germination rates gently decline after 20 years, or 50, or sometimes not at all, for a long while. When viability drops beneath a threshold, they sow more and grow more, harvest fresh seeds carefully, and return them to their envelope, keeping the line alive while the clock remains slow. The gentle rhythm continues. You can imagine a seed as a story folded in upon itself, a story of where it grew and when, who tended it, and what seasons shaped it. There are seeds collected from fields where people have saved the best grains by hand for centuries, heirlooms shaped by patience and weather. There are seeds of rare plants from mountainsides where the wind smells of mineral dust and the air has a cool metallic sweetness, collected with permits and care. Some seeds come from markets, bought from a small stall where the vendor smiles and knows exactly how long to simmer for a perfect lentil soup. Others are sent by farmers who still tend old varieties, packaging kernels in paper that shows the yawning lines of years. They travel in small boxes with ordinary brown tape, but inside is a map of genes that once fed a village and might, in a future climate, feed many again. When the boxes arrive, gloved hands open them, the air sighs a little, and bottles of desiccant go to work quietly, pulling a few of the tiniest molecules of water from the air inside each small sealed world. Seeds sleep in nature too, beneath the meadow that looks empty in the winter, under soil that is cold and damp. There are seeds that have drifted down over years and have nestled into the dark. Soil has a smell in the winter like sown in gentle earth, and in that quiet dampness, seeds wait. Some need a winter to soften their coats, the thawing and freezing slowly opening the stubborn layers that keep water out. Some listen for the chemistry of smoke on the air, a signal that the canopy above has cleared and sunlight will be abundant. Some look for light itself, responding to a tiny sensor within, a pigment called phytochrome that tells the embryo whether it is shallow or deep. Some count days in warmth, their enzymes quietly noting the passing of hours. There are seeds that drift long distance on the wind, their edges papery and translucent like moth wings. And there are seeds heavy and rich, with oils that a passing animal carries away and buries for later. Each has its way of waiting, and each has a cue that announces that the time to wake has come. The gentle rhythm continues. Inside a seed bank, the cues are managed by humans. A test for a certain species might involve stratification, a span of chilled days to simulate winter, then a slow warming to a mild spring. For others, the technicians might gently nick the seed coat with a filter to let water in, or bathe the seeds in a pale solution of smoky compounds that tell them of a faraway fire that will never singe them here. Sometimes light is needed, and for others, darkness. And so seeds are tucked into incubators where the lights come on and off on a set cycle. The world simplified into a pattern of gentle predictability. These rhythms are like the heartbeat of a vaulted garden that is nowhere and everywhere at once. You may have heard of a few seeds that have waited for a very long time. There is the story of a date palm seed, dry and patient, that was found in an ancient jar and coaxed to life with quiet persistence. There are lotus seeds discovered in a lake bed that germinated after centuries, their shells hard and protective. These are unusual, but not impossible, and they remind us that life is threaded with patience beyond our own. Most seeds will not wait for thousands of years, but many can wait for decades if treated well, and some can wait for centuries, especially in a vault where the air is dry and the cold is steady. Each success, even a modest one, helps someone somewhere keep an old flavor, an old resilience, an old shape of leaf alive. It is a very gentle kind of hope. In seed banks, the language of preservation is full of soft practices. Cool, dry, and dark, they say, as if arranging a bed. The moisture content should be low, but not too low. Oxygen should be held away either by a barrier layer that is stubborn and thin, like the foil laminate that is folded and sealed, or by flushing with a gentle blanket of nitrogen gas that does no harm. Temperatures should stay constant. For recalcitrant seeds, special care is designed like a bespoke winter coat, with cryopreservation methods that avoid the formation of ice crystals by moving water into a glassy state. To do this, scientists prepare tiny pieces of plant tissue with protectants that slip inside cells and hold water still when cold comes. In a good cryopreservation system, there is a liquid nitrogen cloud that looks like soft fog, and inside it, microscopic parts of the plant sleep in a way that can, in principle, continue almost indefinitely without damage. When the time comes to wake them, the tissue is warmed gently, and it returns to life as if from an unhurried nap. The gentle rhythm continues. Save a moment to imagine the people who tend these rooms. There is a curator whose desk is neat, with soft pencils lined up and a spreadsheet open on a screen that glows like cool water. There is someone carefully sieving chaff from seed heads, the straw fragments whispering against the mesh. In a small greenhouse hung with clear plastic, another person is transplanting seedlings into rows of small pots, placing one slender seedling in each little square, pressing the soil around it just gently enough. The greenhouse air smells of damp compost and warm water, and there is the quiet tapping sound of irrigation lines letting a drip fall at measured intervals. Out in the field, there is a plot where older varieties stand, their stems a little shorter or a little taller than modern ones. Their colors varied. Each plant is isolated enough that its pollen stays mostly with its own, so that the seed harvested is true to its name, true to its past. When the heads dry and the seeds rattle, the harvest is gentle and labeled immediately, so that no line of memory is lost. In a world of changing weather, this work feels like writing a calm, detailed letter to the future, placing it in an envelope and filing it in a library that will still be there when someone is ready to read. What a seed bank holds is not only crops, but also wild relatives. The wild cousins of wheat, rice, potato, and many others carry traits that farmers will find comforting in warm decades ahead. A wild grass may show tolerance to a salty soil. A wild bean might resist a pest, and a wild relative of a fruit may flower even when days are shorter or longer than usual. By keeping a wide range of seeds, by opening the door to shorter and longer seasons, to drier or wetter months, seed banks give breeders and growers options that feel like the slow unfurling of a safety net. Collecting wild seeds is a careful art. The collector notes the location, the number of plants nearby, the shape and smell of the place, so that the gathered seeds carry with them a description of home. Avoiding too much harvest from any one spot ensures that wild populations stay healthy, so that both the living patch of land and the quiet envelopes in the vault continue side by side as two forms of the same plant story. The gentle rhythm continues. This work is practical, but it is also poetic. You can feel it when you hold a packet of seeds and imagine the hands that will open it in a century, within a workshop lit by a skylight that is not yet built, in a city whose edges will have shifted in ways we cannot map today. This person will slice the packet open, tip a few seeds into a small dish, breathe in, and start the quiet acts that lead to green. They might walk out to a nursery bench and place these seeds onto prepared soil that smells like rain and tea leaves, water them with a rhythm that never hurries, and then come back the next morning, the next week, and the next, until tiny hooks of green appear and then straighten. The practitioner of that future day might smile gently upon seeing that the plants match the notes, that the leaves have exactly the margin described, that the seeds harvested at the end match the pattern photographed long ago. The garden returns not as a spectacle, but as the slow unfurling of a promise that waited. The gentle rhythm continues. Sometimes seeds are needed not only to revive fields, but to restore ecosystems that are worn thin. A prairie that once hummed with grasses and flowers can be sown again if there is a supply of seeds that are locally adapted, each species placed not in isolation, but in a mix that invites a community. The restoration team picks species that flower early, mid-season, and late to feed pollinators and provide shade and structure. Seeds are sown into ground that has been prepared to receive them, perhaps after a gentle disturbance to open space in the soil. Rain comes, or a soft irrigation, and the first season is a quiet proof of concept. The second is more confident, and by the third and fourth, a person might stand in the tall grasses and brush their fingertips along the bleached stems and feel that the land is remembering itself. In wetland restoration, the packets contain sedges and rushes that ask for low ground and steady moisture. On a hillside, there are seeds that hold the soil with reassuring firmness. Each place has its palette, and the paint box is lined with seeds and packets that whisper when moved. The gentle rhythm continues. We can think of seed longevity in the language of time itself. In a cupboard at room temperature, a packet might survive for a year or two. In a refrigerator at a few degrees above freezing, 5 to 10. In a freezer at household cold, longer. In a carefully maintained vault at the international standard, a long time indeed, sometimes centuries. The rate of chemical reactions halves and halves again with each step down in temperature and dryness, slowing the processes that would otherwise gently fray DNA, oxidize lipids, and unfold proteins. The lipid-rich seeds, filled with oils for energy, are often more delicate than the starch-rich ones, because oils can become rancid. But with low oxygen and low temperature, even these slow down. In this slow land, the calendar has thick pages that turn seldom. Every decade or so, the lab might take a small sample and see how the sleeping seeds still feel, whether they stretch into life as readily as they did the first time. If the germination rate declines, fresh seeds are produced and the cycle renews. Like winding a clock every once in a while, this keeps the timepiece faithful. Exactly so, the gentle rhythm continues. When seeds must move from one place to another, the process is careful and quiet. A seed bank packs the duplicates into sturdy boxes lined with polystyrene that feels like a dense cloud under the fingers. There are small loggers tucked in to monitor temperature. A courier collects the shipment and it moves through cool warehouses and into colder rooms before it flies, always accompanied by papers that explain exactly what these packets are and what they are not. They arrive at a vault like Svalbard and are received in a steady, simple ceremony of scanning and shelving. No one opens the packets there because Svalbard is not a lab. It is a library of last resort, a backup. The boxes slide into their places like books into a shelf. and then they rest. The mountain wraps around them, and the permafrost is an extra layer of refrigeration that does not depend on human effort. If the electricity faltered for a while, the mountain would still protect its quiet guests. In this way, many small acts of care add up to a feeling of safety and calm that extends beyond individuals, beyond lifetimes. Still awake? Comment the secret word, nebula. Now feel the calm draw deeper as we drift through a long future measured in slow breaths. As the years pass, the vault receives new deposits when a crop breeder finishes a cycle of selection, when a community seed library notices that a beloved variety is dwindling and wants to give it a safe haven, when a national program duplicates its holdings so that a second location safeguards them. Climate models change, and the world outside the vault shifts softly under different patterns of weather. Inside, the temperature holds steady, and packets doze. Elsewhere, a field will face a dry summer, and a breeder will reach into the collection for an old barley that learned to thrive with less water in a valley where rain seldom came, or a pathogen will change its shape a little, and an old land race will show a way to resist without fuss. These are quiet victories, so mild that many will not notice beyond the field or the greenhouse, but each is a step that felt prepared and comfortable because the seed was there. In city neighborhoods, people form seed libraries that feel like extending hands across time scales. A jar on a shelf holds pumpkin seeds from a courtyard garden. Another jar holds a corn saved by a family that moved from a long distance. And notes are tucked alongside these jars, scribbled in pencil by different writers who share what they saw and tasted. These jars are small, spontaneous archives that echo the large vaults, each acting at a scale that fits itself into daily life. In small towns, a community garden keeps envelopes with the sun-warmed scent of ripe tomatoes trapped in them. And when a child opens a packet and presses a seed into soil, the chain resumes, linking past to present in a way that is tender and unhurried. Let your mind wander to the way seeds embody time. Edenic myths and dawn stories often begin with gardens, but gardens are not instant. Gardens are patient arrangements of light and moisture, of seasons that shift, a leaf falling, frost forming, meltwater running like silver threads, and then little green fingers sliding up through the soil. The seeds in a vault are like this, but slowed further, so that the seasonal calendar expands into a calendar of centuries. In this stretched out time, people are stewards who will never see the very end of their work, and that is part of what makes it serene. A curator might pick up a dusty envelope that was sealed long before their first day, and the decision they make about it will be for someone who has not yet been born. To the person writing a note on the label, the curl of their letters is a message that will be read under a different style of light. The gentle rhythm continues. There are technical details that feel almost like meditation when performed with care. A moisture meter clicks and displays a small number to 1 decimal place, and the technician nods, a quiet confirmation that a packet is ready to seal. A foil bag lies across a heat bar, and the smell is faintly like warm, clean paper as the polymer inside the foil bonds. A vacuum hums, extracting air. The bag draws tight, and then the seal line glows for a moment and fades. A label goes on straight, without bubbles, and a marker draws a thin line in black ink that will stay legible for a long time. In the testing room, a petri dish sits under a light that is not harsh, and water beads at the edge of a filter paper like dew. A tiny radical emerges, translucent white, and curves toward the paper, and a very small leaf, pale as a cloud at dawn, uncurls. These are not dramatic scenes. They are precisely the opposite. They are small signs that build trust in the entire chain. The design of a seed bank is humble on purpose. Concrete walls keep the temperature from swinging. Doors fit snugly to hold moisture out. Shelves are strong and simple because they carry a descent of weight from thousands of packets. Lights are bright enough for careful work but dimmable because constant glare would be tiring. In many places, the system is quiet, more like a library than a laboratory. There are references to standards written on laminated sheets near the workbenches. There is a calendar with due dates for regeneration of certain accessions, little squares marked with neat handwriting. The software that tracks everything is designed to be as calm as the space itself, a screen that looks the same every day, with entries that are consistent and clear. The gentle rhythm continues. Sometimes a seed bank is asked to do something poignant and practical at the same time. A variety disappears from the fields, or a wild population vanishes from a familiar hillside. The seed bank becomes the place that can return a piece of the world that was lost. When this happens, the handover is simple and respectful. A researcher requests a small portion, perhaps a few hundred seeds of a particular accession. The bank sends them with documentation that reads like a letter of introduction. The researcher receives them and in a greenhouse or nursery starts them gently, taking care to harvest enough seed to multiply the line without stress. After a season or two, a new supply returns to the bank, and the circle is complete. A lost piece of something becomes present again, alive in both the field and the vault. The gentle rhythm continues. There are lessons about patience here that feel good to hold. Not everything must be solved in a day. Not everything must be witnessed by the same person who began it. Seeds, when handled kindly, give us permission to trust careful processes over quick ones, to build archives that feel like communal ensembles rather than solo performances. In a time when much is fast, seed vaults are deliberately slow. They slow the metabolism of living. They slow the movement of materials. They slow the rhythm of decision-making to a place where notes can be read and understood. Slow hope is an accurate phrase for this work. It is hope that spreads its roots quietly, not shallowly, not hastily, but with a low confidence that grows larger under the surface. Imagine again the long corridor inside the mountain. On the far wall, the frost glimmers like sugar in the low light. The floor is slightly damp at the edges where the boundary between mountain and room breathes gently. The door seals make a soft hush when they close, almost like the sound of hands smoothing a sheet. For a moment, a person stands still, listening to the low mechanical hum that keeps time like a heartbeat. Then they turn and walk slowly back toward the daylight, their steps even, not hurried, because nothing in this place is urgent in the usual sense. It feels like the planet breathing at a calm pace, like the measured expansion and contraction of seasons. In another country, the Millennium Seed Bank lies partly underground, with sloped glass and gentle earthworks that blend building and landscape. Botanical garden staff move in and out, sometimes carrying trays where dried seed heads rest on blotter paper, seeds rattling softly like a whispered conversation. Inside, clean benches hold magnifying lenses and soft brushes. Staff separate seed from chaff with the same patient movements learned generations ago, modernized by gentle vacuums and screens matched to exact seed sizes. Each lot is counted in small samples, with counters that click like a metronome. Each count estimates how many lives are in a single handful. It is a pleasing task, and it teaches the counter to be present, to notice differences between species, to tune into the fine detail of the living material at hand. The science of seed aging has its own calm. There are theories that describe how sugars in the seed's tissues can quietly become caramel-like, how lipids can oxidize, how water pockets can allow small reactions to proceed even in the cold. There are remedies, too, such as drying and sealing, selecting seeds harvested at peak maturity, choosing storage materials that protect, and monitoring in cycles. The result is a graph that becomes familiar to those who have spent years at these benches, a slow curve that shows a long period of high viability followed by a gentle decline. There is comfort in the predictability of that curve, in the sense that if you take care of small details now, you will protect thousands of tiny lives later. The gentle rhythm continues. Seed banks are integrated with living collections in gardens and farms. When a bank needs to multiply a lot because the germination rate suggests it is time, the process moves outside into the light. Those are planned to avoid cross-pollination that would blend varieties unintentionally. For self-pollinating crops, this is less demanding. But for those that like to share pollen, isolation distances are generous, or fine nets are draped like airy tents. And sometimes careful, small-scale pollinations are done by hand. The harvest comes back in labeled sacks that rustle, and there is a pleasant weight to the seeds when they are poured into trays. It is like pouring sand or sugar, but you remember that each grain is an individual that can become a plant. It is tempting to think of the vault as an end point, but in truth, it is one stage in a long, slow loop. A seed is collected, cleaned, treated, sealed, stored, tested, sometimes regrown, then resealed, stored again, tested again, and so on through time. Each step feels small, but together they form a system that has the strength of water-smoothing stone. The continuity is guarded against much of what might happen outside because it is distributed and redundant. The same variety might be in a national bank, a regional bank, and Svalbard, and also living in the fields of farmers who know its character by feel. This redundancy is intentional calm, like placing a spare key under a familiar stone. The gentle rhythm continues. There are parts of the seed world that are challenging to preserve by seeds alone. Bananas, for example, rarely produce seeds that are anything like their cultivated parents, and many bananas are seedless. Cassava, potatoes, and other crops that are vegetatively propagated need storage as plants or as tiny pieces of tissue. For these, there are tissue culture rooms where soft light is filtered through translucent blinds, and shelves hold small jars lined up like crystals, each with a fragment of plant resting on a clear gel that smells faintly sweet. The jars are labeled with careful codes, and they are periodically refreshed, a process called subculture, where a technician uses a scalpel under a hood to trim and transfer tiny growing tips. For the very long term, parts of these plants are frozen in the same careful manner that helps sensitive seeds held in liquid nitrogen. When they are revived, they form plants again, and that is felt as a kind of everyday miracle that does not strain its voice to announce itself. In the world outside, people plant community gardens, grow balcony herbs, tend allotments, and when seed-saving season comes, they let a few plants go to flower and set seed. They learn that lettuce needs isolation because it would otherwise cross easily, and that tomatoes are more forgiving. They shake poppy pods that sound like little rain sticks, and they rub dried basil flowers between their fingers to separate the tiny black seeds. These acts mirror the careful work in seed vaults on a smaller scale, and they knit humans to plants in gentle reciprocity. A community of seed caretakers deepens the supply that professional seed banks can draw upon. The gentle rhythm continues. The story of seed vaults also includes quiet agreements that are more like handshakes than like contracts. There are international plans that say that seeds deposited in a vault belong to the depositor, that a global vault holds them without taking ownership. There are networks of trust that coordinate who grows what and how, who keeps a copy of which collection, and who can request which seed for breeding or research or direct planting. These networks depend on a culture of sharing and respect, and in the best moments, they feel like sitting at a long table where people bring dishes from their own kitchens and pass them around so that everyone can taste and compare. The seeds become a shared pantry for humanity without losing their identities or their rootedness in the places where they originated. Within this culture, documentation matters the way a map matters to a traveler. Each seed accession has passport data: where it was gathered, at what altitude, in what climate conditions, with what companion species nearby, and what the farmer who grew it observed. Sometimes there are notes about taste, cooking time, the shape of leaves, the size of seed heads. These data become the memory that survives the crossing of centuries. Without them, seeds could be grown, but their story would be thinner. With them, a person in the future can place a variety back into a landscape that suits it, or recreate a dish that was made from it in a far-off kitchen. This is slow hope in its most tangible form, because it is a hope that respects detail and place, not simply the existence of a plant. The gentle rhythm continues. There is poetry, too, in the idea that a garden can return after a long absence. When a fire passes through a forest, there are cones on certain trees sealed with resins that soften in the heat and open, dropping seeds that wait on ash. Beneath prairie fires, seeds in the soil wake in the warmth and in the open light. On a volcanic island that cooled long ago, seeds that arrived on the wind were the first to sprout, the first to bind the dark ash soil, the first to welcome insects and birds. A seed vault carries this same principle into human time. Resilience layered into storage, heat or cold, replaced by careful climate control, and the wild arrival of wind replaced by the steady arrival of a courier. The cycle remains, but smoothed and made safe by human hands. In greenhouses and labs, you can feel the texture of slow success in the way people move. They do not hurry, because hurrying would introduce errors. They do not boast, because boasting is loud, and seeds do not respond to noise. They wear clothing that is practical and quiet, and their tools are simple. Each day has a list, and the list is completed line by line, like a gentle tune that is replayed with slight variations over many months. A season passes, then another. Seeds in storage do not mind the wait. They are the least impatient of living things in their dry state, their inner water still, their DNA held safe in a glass-like matrix. The gentle rhythm continues. At times, an unexpected discovery adds another layer of comfort. A certain wild pea is found to last longer than anyone predicted when stored under dryness and cold because its coat is particularly effective at resisting oxygen. A wild sunflower shows a trait that makes it thrive at a lower fertilizer input. A wheat from a high valley retains a sweetness in its grain when baked that modern varieties have mostly lost, and that note can be bred back into new lines. Each of these small discoveries is gathered, noted, shared, and the bank's role in enabling them remains quiet but essential. Without the packets on those shelves, the discoveries would not be possible. With them, they become normal. Seed vaults do not work alone. Herbariums carry pressed plants mounted on archival paper with specimens that can be examined centuries later to confirm identity. DNA banks keep frozen samples that can provide genetic data if needed. Living collections in botanical gardens show companions to the seeds in a visual way. Farmers' fields are living laboratories of adaptation. Together, they form a web that can catch a plant if it starts to fall away from the world. In this web, the vault is the steady node, the weight in the net that keeps it spread open and ready. Imagine a millennia-old terrace, stone-walled and stepped, where a farmer has planted for generations. In some future season, the climate shifts such that rain arrives in different months. Because seeds were kept, because old varieties were not allowed to fade away entirely, seeds adapted to the new pattern are ready. A gardener walking across that terrace knuckles a churn of soil, checks the moisture, tips a handful of seeds into the other palm, and sows. The practice is the same as it has been for centuries, but the seed is different in a subtle, important way. This is the practical shape of slow hope, and it is gentle because it changes only what needs changing. Let your breathing align with the calm pace of these rooms and fields. The seed coat is like a tiny blanket, the dry endosperm like a pantry stocked up for a long winter. The embryo is curled and serene. In the vault, the air is barely moving. Outside, winds move across hills and buildings. Over time, someone will open a packet, and the dry scent of grain will come to them, a soft cereal smell that is older than speech. They will do their careful work, and then they will pass the packet to someone else when the time comes, and the chain will continue. The gentle rhythm continues. There is beauty in the tools, too. The little paper coin envelopes that rustle when touched, the glass jars that gleam softly, the foil pouches that are thin but tough, the silica gel beads that shift from one color to another as they collect water, signaling with a hint of purple or blue that they are time to refresh. The tall fridge doors that close with a muted sigh, the barcode reader that blips softly. Everything is designed to be clear without being noisy. Even the pens are chosen for their ink, which will not bleed or fade over years. A place where nothing sharp enters without need, where nothing sticky is left to gum up the delicate flow of daily routines. Consider the soil seed bank under a meadow again, and think of how many seeds are there already, not stored by humans, but kept in place by the plain habit of plants to let seeds fall. There are weeds whose seeds can remain viable in soil for decades, slowly germinating when space opens. There are orchid flowers that rest for a year or two before appearing in gentle drifts after a warm summer. Farmers in some places time their plowing and planting to work with this, encouraging a burst of weeds to germinate and then suppressing them, or burying seeds deeply enough to keep them out of the light they need. This natural seed bank is the original vault, and it has its own slow hope embedded in it. The human seed vault is a mirror of that idea, expanded and organized so that we can move beyond the fields of a single farm or a single region into a shared global conversation about what will be needed. While we talk about centuries, the tasks remain daily. People come in each morning, check the gauges, step into the cold rooms to ensure no frost builds in the wrong places, check the logs for shipments due, sit quietly to complete reports that will be valuable to someone they will never meet. In the community sphere, gardeners sweep the floor of a small seed library and smile as they see a child look at different varieties of beans, each with a different speckled pattern. The overall impression is of continuity, of a fabric being woven slowly with thread that may be used to repair a tear many years later. The gentle rhythm continues. The imagination might wander to a distant future day, many centuries from now, when a team will decide that a certain accession is ready to be revived because a flavor long missed is wanted for a celebration, or because a disease resistance is useful, or simply to walk through a field and see what it looked like in a different age. They will find that the seeds kept in the vault, dried and cooled and protected, accept water and light and a modest warmth, and lift their small leaves with a familiarity that will be moving in its quietness. The garden will return. The people there will move among the rows slowly, touching the leaves and smelling the faint differences in the air between one variety and another, noticing how the light glances off the wax on wheat stems differently, how the flag leaves angled just so. They will harvest and taste and share, and then they will repackage fresh seed carefully, seal it, and send a portion back to the vault, renewing the cycle for those who will come after them. To close your eyes inside this thought is to feel safe. The vault is not an emergency siren, but a lullaby, humming at a low, constant volume. It is not a dramatic rescue, but a practiced habit that keeps options alive. It is not a monument, though it sits inside a mountain. It is a workshop and a library and a pantry. It holds a spectrum of flavors and colors and shapes. It holds solutions we do not yet know we need, It holds memories of places and people, and it holds them in a form that asks very little, just a cool dark and a dryness that is easy to maintain. The gentle rhythm continues. You can fall asleep now to the steady knowledge that somewhere, in quiet rooms beneath fields and under mountains, doors are closed gently, lights are dimmed to leave seeds in peace, and a set of small machines hum and keep watch. The boxes sit patient, and inside them, a world of little breaths, paused at the edge of waking, content to wait. The people who tend them will return tomorrow and the day after, and also pass the work to others when their time comes, and the continuity will not break. Imagine yourself walking once more down that corridor, feeling the cool whisper along your skin, the silence that makes your shoulders settle. Imagine the gentle weight of a seed packet in your hand, and the feeling of a century folding quietly in the palm, not heavy, simply present. The garden will return in its own time and in its own way. For now, it sleeps, and that is exactly right. Thank you for spending this slow time here. If your eyes are still open, you can softly press like and subscribe, so we can keep bringing you these calm journeys at the same pace and with the same care. And you can always let the playlist in the description play gently in the background while you drift. Rest well, feel safe, and let the gentle rhythm continue as you slip into sleep.